to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast, the most listened to daily Miami Dolphins podcast on the internet.
Miami's got the Dolphins, the greatest of all.
Come on, Dolphins fans. Time to fins up.
We're in the air, we're on the ground, we're always in control. And when you say Miami, you're talking Super Bowl. Cause we're the Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one. Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins, Miami Dolphins number one.
Good afternoon, Miami Dolphins fans. How are you today? And thank you for listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast on this Wednesday, February the 26th. I am your host, Michael Leva, joined by a very special guest, the host of the All Dolphins podcast and the publisher of the Miami Dolphins on SI, Alain Poupart. Alain, how are you today, and how's life in Indianapolis at the Combine?
It's warm, man. It's warm. I walked back from the Indiana Convention Center back to my hotel about, 4:30. It was 60 degrees.
Wow.
I had my winter jacket on with me that I had brought in case it was going to be cold, and I could have taken it off. I mean, it's been wonderful. So whoever's in charge of the weather in Indy, major props to you guys.
Just want to give you a contrast. Last week where I am up in Syracuse, we got over 3 feet of snow. And I pretty much couldn't leave my house for like 4 days. So I'm glad you're enjoying life in Indy. Well, I've been up here just watching snow melt for the past week as I've left my house like twice.
You hate it when that happens, right?
Yeah, I know. Hate it when it happens. All right, let's get into. There's been a lot of news with the Dolphins this week, with especially Mike McDaniel when he spoke to the media on Tuesday. And I want to start with the offensive line at Armstead, but I first want to start with Armstead because at 11 o'clock on Tuesday, Mike McDaniel says the team is operating as if Tehran will not be part of the team in 2025. And to me, once the second part of the story sort of broke with his contract, I think people forgot about the first part, because when he changed his contract to go from like 28 million to like 1.2, and he opened up all this salary cap space for Miami of around 14 million, people are thinking, well, he's going to be back in Miami this year. I still think they might not want him because they probably want to play Patrick Paul. And I still think there's a chance, A, he'll retire, or B, he still might be let go. Is that sort of how you see this?
Oh, absolutely. And the whole idea of him like agreeing to the reduction in the base salary to the veteran minimum, mind you, he still has a prorated portion of his signing bonus counting against the cap. But the whole idea was to buy himself some time to make a decision where his cap number on March 12th, where the Dolphins have to get down to the salary cap, be compliant on that date, wouldn't be as high. But you mentioned the very significant factor of, why'd you pick Patrick Paul in the second round if he's going to sit for 4 years or 3 years, even 3 years?
Yep.
Or even 2 years. To me, at some point, this is an idea like what's the term, progress blocker.
Yep. I've been saying that a lot on the show. Yep.
Yeah, that's kind of what you're dealing with. And the other part of it is, like it or not, fair or not, Tehran's a guy whose body always breaks down. So you combine those two things. And
Seems pretty obvious to me. Seems pretty obvious what they're going to do here. He's a great guy. Obviously, everyone likes him. He's a leader, which you kind of need leaders in that locker room with things we've heard. But you can't pay a guy who's only giving you 10, 12, 13 games a year all that money when you use a second-round pick on a guy you expect to be the future. There's a lot of things that clash here. And I think as much as everyone loves the guy, probably time for either him to retire or at least for Miami to move on. And if he wants to play somewhere else, great for him. But I think for Miami, they were the oldest team in the league and they had a lot of injuries. And I think, he's one of the guys that check both boxes.
No, without question. And if you look at the past 2 seasons, what has been, in fact, the last 3 seasons with Mike McDaniel, what's been a common theme is they get dinged by injuries. And at some point, it's like you can't. And I know Chris Grier always brings up the Curtis Martin example of how he was injured in college and played in the NFL, never got hurt.
Exception, not the rule.
Well, correct, understood. But the other part of it too is if you're going to eliminate anybody who's ever had an injury beforehand,
you'll never sign anybody too. Yeah.
But you also don't necessarily want to invite it. And considering it's been a problem, I'd be inclined to lean with you where it's probably more likely than not that he will not be on the Dolphin roster in 2025.
Okay. Let's talk about the rest of the offensive line, because when Mike McDaniel spoke, I think for at least a lot of fans of the Dolphins, it was like angels started to sing. It was like, oh, it seems like they have a plan to invest in the offensive line. Finally, it was like a spiritual awakening for these guys who, for the past few years, have sat there and said, "You're more worried about it than we are." We have a chuckle behind the scenes when you guys are always asking about this. And, they said, he said that there's a few guys that they've sort of targeted. They hope they can sign.
Mm-hmm.
They've clearly had a philosophy shift with the offensive line. Obviously they need to address guards. How much you think should they invest free agency versus the draft? Is there a healthy balance here? Like, don't spend all the free agency money on offensive linemen, knowing you have so many other needs. And how many guys you think they're going to sign? Is there a chance Jones, Liam, or Wynn are returned? Maybe not as starters, but for depth. What are your thoughts on the offensive line?
Yeah, I will say this. Let me start by saying this. And I wrote about this on MiamiDolphinsOnTheSide.com. Since the guy takes a lot of arrows in his defense, it's not like the Dolphins have not tried to acquire and beef up the offensive line.
They've just failed at it. Yeah.
A lot of the moves haven't worked out, but it's not like they didn't try. I mean, if you start in 2020, they didn't pick one or two. They picked 3 offensive linemen in the draft. In 2021, they traded up in the second round for Liam Eichenberg. That didn't pan out, but it's not like they didn't try. 2022, they signed Teron Armstead. 2023, they signed Connor Williams, who was a really
last year was the issue where they did nothing, though. Literally nothing last year.
Well, they drafted Patrick Paul in the second round, which was for the future.
For the future, though, yes.
Okay. They also were counting on Isaiah Wynn to handle one of those guard spots, probably left guard again. Had a setback. That didn't help. And the part I didn't like is, and this was revealed in some of the comments from the coaches, it was always like, there are guys, we trust them, they're going to improve. And they work hard. They deserve another shot. I work hard. You don't want me playing guard.
Exactly.
I mean,
exactly. Yeah.
That part I didn't like. So having said all that, Chris Grier made it sound at the end of the season press conference like it was going to be 2020 all over again with multiple draft picks. I don't know if that's the route I necessarily would go. I think for you 2 starting guards, I could see 1 veteran free agent, cough, cough, James Daniels, cough, cough, Aaron Banks, perhaps, cough, cough. Yep. The list escapes me right now. And I wrote about it and I forget right now. And then maybe a draft pick, preferably second round. Would not rule out first round as well.
Yep.
It's cough, cough, Calvin Banks Jr. Somebody
exactly.
Of the 3 guards are free agents, Jones, Eichenberg, and Wynn. I see no scenario where Liam Eichenberg would want to return or the Dolphins would want to have him back.
It's just bad optics if they do, honestly. Just bad optics at this point.
Not only that, also with him, after I've been, for lack of a better term, jerked around from one spot to another on the line, and he may be like, you know what, see you fellas.
Exactly. I'm sure he would.
I think Robert Jones would be a good possibility to return. I know he told one of the local newspapers he was amenable to that idea. And I wrote also that to me, the first big push I make is try to re-sign Isaiah Wynn, who I think, again, probably feels he has unfinished business with the Dolphins. He should not cost very much. And when he played in 2023, in the first 7 games, actually was pretty good.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there on Wynn. I actually think he's got something to prove. Now, look, he is one of those guys who's also always injured. He was injured with the Patriots when he was there. Came here, he got injured. I get it, but if he's not penciled in to start, let's just say, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. I think someone like him, Robert Jones as well, second string. But yeah, I would, because I know fans, when they start talking about mock drafts and stuff, any pick that's not an offensive lineman, they flip out. I'm like, guys, we have holes everywhere. Every pick cannot be offensive line. Mm-hmm. We have various, look at the secondary. We got like nothing in the secondary right now. We need other positions. So yes, I would think try to get 1 veteran guard at least. If you get 2, great, but get 1 at least in your pocket. And then you can sort of maneuver the other one around. And I would think if there's a guy kind of like what we saw with Laramie Tunsil, like Calvin Banks, who's an offensive tackle, can play guard as well, though, because if Patrick Paul doesn't pan out, you got a guy who might be able to kick out and be your left tackle. Then someone like that.
Mike,
really
don't even say that. Don't say that, Mike.
You don't want that.
Don't like project it and then put it out in the stratosphere like that.
Patrick Paul's going to be a stud. Patrick Paul. I hope Patrick Paul's a stud. I really do. But you got to kind of think that way as well. Or maybe not. Tyreek Hill's always in the news, and he had surgery on his wrist, which for most players, if you see someone in a cast, you would say he had surgery. With Tyreek, you kind of need confirmation because you're not really sure.
Yeah,
and then we had Joe. Yes, because he's a troll. He's a troll, essentially, to call it what it is. Joe Rose said this week he's been told by multiple people he got Wes Welker fired, which I know Mike McDaniel he addressed. The contract, and I see with fans, there's a lot of Tyreek Hill exhaustion. And I get it. It's a lot. I know it's almost impossible to move on from his contract. Almost is a key word, though. And do you think there's a chance that if the right offer comes, if they're able to address wide receiver room in the draft, free agency, to where they're not going to feel like they're taking a giant step back? Anything they do is a step back, but not a giant step back. That he might not be on the roster week 1. It's tough. I know the contract's tough. The contract's tough.
Like, we can talk about the Dolphins wanting to do things differently. I know they want to add different elements, but they're not going to change the personality of their offense. It's still going to be more than anything else a track meet. And who's your biggest track star? It's Tyreek Hill. And are we going to pretend he was a complete choir boy, no issues whatsoever in 2022 and 2023 when he was lighting it up?
No.
Yeah, thank you. So, again, to me, I've written this. The only way I see them trading him is if they come to a conclusion that having him on the roster hurts us way more than his production brings us. And it's not just the number of catches. It's the space he opens up because defenses fear him so much. I mean, Mike McDaniel even said it several times that defenses play way off. Why do they play way off? Because they're scared of his speed. Well, there's a reason why Jonnu Smith and Devon Achane underneath were always wide open. It's because the DBs are all the way back because they're scared of Tyreek Hill. And that doesn't show up in the stats. All the fans look at his numbers last year. He didn't get 1,000 yards. Well, number one, it was 986. It's not like we're talking.
Pretty close. Exactly.
Pretty
close.
Sorry, no offense to anybody mentioned. It's not we're talking Ernest Wilford numbers here.
Yeah.
Ernest, I only talk on Thursdays. Wilford. It's not. It's not what we're talking about. So, yeah. Again, and the thing with the comments after the game against the Jets, if you know Tyreek, Tyreek speaks without a filter, highly emotional, completely pissed. I didn't make the playoffs. Spoke out of frustration. I'm out. And then he sits on it, and then it's like, I don't want to go anywhere. It's not like the Dolphins haven't taken care of him at every turn with his contract. So,
yeah, it just seems unlikely. But I would think, it's just always something. The fans, which again, it's the fans, but fans will defend anybody, and most of them are pretty tired of the antics and the headlines and stuff. I can only imagine how the people behind the scenes, which they'll never let out publicly, how they must feel some of this stuff. But yeah. I don't think it's impossible, but it's probably very much unlikely because just the contract they gave him makes it so tough to move. Javon Holland, I always call it NFL code. When someone is about to be a free agent, if a team wants him, they go, we are hopeful to keep Javon Holland, a member of the Miami Dolphins organization for many years. But when they're ready to just let a guy walk, he's earned the right to test free agency. That's the kiss of death right there. And It's not just the Dolphins. That's NFL code across the league. So he's going to be gone. And that leaves the secondary in shambles, essentially. But I look at what Miami has lost in recent years of guys who've pretty much left after their rookie deals. Wilkins, Raekwon Davis, Mike Gesicki, Robert Hunt, now Holland. Andrew Van Ginkel signed a one-year extender, but he was pretty much his rookie deal. And Brandon Jones. Is it problematic that, the majority of the players don't stay in Miami past the rookie deals? Because not that all those guys are great, but most of them are contributors or guys who started that we drafted, we developed, and I don't think we're retaining enough of them.
Yeah, but
I know you can't sign everybody, but that's a lot right there.
And there are different circumstances involved. Like, for example, you blame the Dolphins for not giving Christian Wilkins the bag he got in Las Vegas. It's not like they didn't try to re-sign him before that. The year before didn't work out. and then he got the huge offer from Vegas. In the case of Raekwon Davis, again, as politely as I can say this, is that really a big loss?
No.
Back players. That was, if we're going to be honest about it, that was a bad second-round pick.
Yeah.
Brandon Jones was painful to watch last year because he was a good
tackler.
player.
Yeah.
And then last year he completely blew up. So does that speak to the better coaching in Denver with the secondary scheme, or the scheme by the way, Vance Joseph, former Dolphin defensive coordinator? Van Ginkel I didn't like because they didn't even make him an offer last year. With that situation, my guess is Anthony Weaver looked at his tape and decided not great for my scheme.
I was told it's because he had the foot injury, and that type of foot injury scares them to death, and they don't want anyone who had that type of foot injury. Now, that's what I was told. Is that true or not? That's what I was told. Of course,
this is where a smart guy could point out, well, it's very prudent of the Dolphins to stay away from injury-prone players.
Yeah, true. So,
I mean,
yeah, exactly.
One
so
time they should have taken
damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Either way, I get it. But they still could have made him an offer, maybe, because it's not like he broke the bank with the Vikings. It wasn't that much money, and the guy that they paid to replace him never played a snap in Shaq Barrett. So there is that whole aspect of it too.
Yeah. No, but to answer your overall question, I don't see necessarily a systemic problem. Although let me take that back. Yeah, kind of, sort of, because you'd like to have your foundation built on young players that you draft and develop and get second contracts, as opposed to having all your marquee players being guys that you brought in from the outside and had to spend.
Chubb, Ramsey, Armstead, Hill, they got, outside of the quarterback, obviously, they get a ton of money. We didn't draft any of them. We had to part with picks or sign them as free agents in the case of Armstead. And these guys we drafted, we developed, we prepared them to get the big payday, but they're not getting it from us. That's where I think that's, again, they can't sign everyone. I get it. Yeah. Raekwon, fine, let him go. But for as little as he's making, he's probably better than someone like Benito Jones. And it's not like Raekwon left for a ton of money. Okay. But the point is, you couldn't keep a couple of these guys. I get what you're saying, but I just think we let so many guys go. It's like we're just a farm team essentially for the league.
Well, but that was but you're focusing on last year, and the result of that, you could make the argument then that your free agent losses equate to a third, a fourth, and a seventh round pick. By the way, you didn't even mention Deshaun Elliott. They let go after 1 year, but yeah. He wasn't their own.
Yeah, yeah, he wasn't drafted. So yeah, I just find it interesting because people say Chris Grier with the draft, he's not that good. I would say, well, he's not that bad. It's just nobody stays past a rookie deal. So there's it's a very nuanced conversation, I think, and it's interesting to see. And we'll see. Obviously, Holland is going to be the next one to leave now, and we'll see how he does. After I think he's going to be great with whoever he signs with, because I just think last year, I think he'll be I think he'll be great. Obviously, he has to go to the right team, and I know he wants the money. God bless him. He should chase the money, take life-changing money. But I think he's a very good player who just had one bad year. And for all the stuff with him and Vic Fangio, his best season came with Vic, which I find kind of funny in the end of the day. And I wouldn't be shocked if he signs with the Vikings, who got $60 million to spend, and Flores likes him, and he'd probably feel real comfortable up there, and they need help at safety. So that would not shock me if Holland ends up in Minnesota. But the whole thing with Vic is you should have, begged for Vic to stay because you had your best season with him.
but he was too tough.
Yeah, I know. He wanted him to work. Okay, quarterback, specifically backup quarterback. Do you think there's a chance that Miami would just re-sign Tyler Huntley and just call it a day? He's our number 2. Or are they going to go out there and look at the Marcus Mariota, Trey Lance, Mac Jones, Zach Wilson, Mason Rudolph, Joe Flacco, Locke, Cooper Rush, that group, and sign someone from there? They won't be short-sighted. Please tell me they won't be short-sighted enough to just sign Huntley and call it a day.
And you forgot Jimmy G in the equation also.
True.
I would be like... I would be like this if it was, and this nothing against Tyler Huntley. When the stuff came out at the end of the year where he made the comment that his agent had been told the Dolphins weren't interested in bringing him back, I'm like, I'm all for it to compete for the number 2 with hopefully somebody
Exactly.
of a higher caliber. Even though I don't want to diss him too bad because he is a former Pro Bowl quarterback after all, as a 23rd alternate.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
On his Twitter bio, Pro Bowl quarterback.
Yeah. But you saw the thing with him is you saw very clearly it's up and down. He's never been a great passer in the NFL. The game he had against Cleveland in Week 17 completely blew me away. When I wrote that was as good as you would have gotten from a starting quarterback. That performance was. But then in the first half against the Jets, it wasn't great.
Exact opposite. Yeah, exact opposite.
All right. Which is, again, that's his pattern. He's not – there's a reason he's been a backup his entire year, and there's a reason he started the 2024 season on a practice squad after signing with the Browns as one of 4 quarterbacks on their roster and not making the team.
Yeah. So out of all the names I mentioned, does one or two sort of stick out as guys that sort of pique your interest, or are they like just get one of them and I think we'll be okay? Because some of those guys you can just throw in a hat and like they're all kind of the same. But does one or two of them stick out like, you know what, that guy might be worth investing in that guy? Because every time I ask someone this question in the media or whoever, they all go Zach Wilson, which I'm not against Zach Wilson, but it seems like he's the clubhouse favorite for most, reporter types, let's say. Are you a Zach Wilson guy, or 2, does anyone else in that list sort of pique your interest?
My concern with Zach Wilson is he's got the highest ceiling. He's also got maybe the lowest floor. Because if he winds up in, playing a couple of meaningful games for the Dolphins and you get bad Zach Wilson when the decision-making wasn't very good with the Jets, you got problems. Then again, he's got the one who's got the best chance of lighting it up. Is that where we want to go? Or do we prefer having somebody who's steadier, who is never going to be great, but also is never going to be horrible, such as I think Marcus Mariota is one of those guys. Andy Dalton would have been one of those guys, but he went back to Carolina. I think I'd go to Jimmy G. To me is a good option. Yes, I understand he's another guy who's injury prone. But if we're going to eliminate all those guys,
he's worked with Mike McDaniel too. Well, he knows that type of offense too. So I think that would be a plus for someone like Jimmy G.
No, correct. And he's, my guess, comfortable being he's okay with being a backup. Joe Flacco was very good with the Browns last year. It was really up and down with the Colts last year, but he's still pretty good. And then who else did you mention?
Mac Jones. Where are you on Mac? Because that's like the other interesting name. Because when it comes to guys like Easton Stick, Drew Lock, Trey Lance, like I really hope they don't go there, honestly. Those guys. But if it was like Marcus Mariota, Mac Jones, Zach Wilson, Jimmy G, I think someone in that group would give fans, and I think even people on the team and the staff, okay, when something happens to Tua, probably when, we have a chance. We have a fighter's chance at least with this guy as quarterback.
No, I agree. And I think any one of those guys would be okay. I'm with you. Mac Jones.
I know. It's a lotto ticket. You're hoping for the next Sam Darnold, where he was, left the Jets, high pick, went to the Panthers, went to San Francisco, bounced around. Then he goes to the Vikings. It's like, I just want to scratch off lotto ticket. This was a guy everyone sort of brushed aside. Look at the year he had. With Zach Wilson and Mac Jones, you're hoping that you hit on a scratch off lottery ticket. That's the only way why you would sign them, I think.
Yeah, except my problem with Mac Jones is I still have flashbacks as last year in New England where he was really
terrible. It was terrible. Yeah.
And also, if you know my reputation, I've been tagged as an arm queen, and Mac Jones doesn't have a good arm. So I'll give you another option who would be interesting to me if it turns out that, contrary to what GM Terry Fontenot said, the Falcons decided, we don't want to have, we're gonna suck it up and eat the money on Kirk Cousins' contract. They release him. You can basically sign him for the veteran minimum because he's going to get his money from Atlanta. I think he would be a very good option.
That'd be absolutely. I haven't really talked about him because I think he'll get a shot to start somewhere. Honestly, I don't think he'll come as a backup. With Tua, the contract can be restructured and open up $19 million. Would you venture that and touch that contract, knowing right now there's an out that's not so far out of the way where, God forbid, he keeps getting hurt, or God forbid they can't win against teams that are good and he doesn't play great against teams that are good? We have an out. not that far away? Or would you restructure him knowing, well, now you've moved that out down the road a little bit just to make it tougher? I mean, they still can do it sooner. It's just be more painful. Where are you on restructuring his deal?
Mike, come on, man. You know damn well where I am on restructuring. So for the record, I am not a Tua hater, but I have my reservations about Tua.
We're in the same camp. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, no, you and I are like this.
Yeah.
I didn't like the contract extension. I don't like being tied to him down the road because I still have concerns about what the ceiling is, and the ceiling that has not been popped in recent years. If the Dolphins can avoid it, if they absolutely have no choice, they need to do it to create the cap space necessary to operate this offseason. Okay, I get it. If it can be avoided, that most definitely would be my recommendation.
Yeah, I mean, again, not a hater. It's just the guy, he misses a lot of games. And when they play teams that are good, it's, not all the time, but most of the time, not his best games. Look at last year versus the Bills, the first game. Look at the game against Houston. Even the game against the Packers, everyone said he played great. Not in the first half, he didn't. And that's where the game was lost, in the first half. Not the second half where the game was pretty much over. It's like we know, the positives with him, and we also know the negatives. And I would not touch that deal. I think, they had faith in him when they gave him the money because 2023 stayed healthy. Great. And we thought, okay, maybe he's learned to protect himself. A lot of his injuries, people like to blame the offensive line. A lot of his injuries have nothing to do with the offensive line. It's just him playing kind of reckless. And that's why I would not touch that deal. But we'll see what they do. But I'm with you. I wouldn't touch it.
The most disturbing thing to me, maybe of everything that happened with Tua last year, is he gets hurt against Buffalo. Then he comes back and he takes on the Rams defender after throwing a pick.
Yep.
Then he has a press conference and he talks about, I realize I have to be smart and I have to make good decisions and protect myself, not put myself in jeopardy to hurt the team like that. Then they play Houston. He scrambles out of the pocket. He's got Jonnu Smith wide open in the flat. Instead of throwing him the ball, he continues to scramble, takes on a defender, gets hit in the side of the hip, and then misses the last 2 games of the season because of it. It's like, you didn't learn anything. And I get the competitive juices start flowing in the course of a game, but how are we to believe that that's ever going to change?
You can't believe them. And once again, it's lip service at this point, especially when he talks and when Mike McDaniel talk. A lot of what they say the right things in the moment, but then follow it up in a week or 2 or 3. Just watch the games. It's like, well, you said like you're not going to call a fade pass to these small wide receivers in the end zone. And then you called it 4 times since you said that to the media. You see the quarterback, I got to protect myself. I know how important I am to the team. He's out there, all those things you said. So it's a lot of lip service. And again, he's a great guy off the field, everything. He checks a lot of boxes, but on the field, that's a lot of money. And there's a lot of people's jobs hinging on this stuff. And fans pay good money to watch these games, and they want to see the team win. They're not going there to pay and see Skylar Thompson and Tyler Huntley or Mike White. And it's like, if this guy can't protect himself,
Tim Boyle, you forgot Tim Boyle.
I forgot Tim Boyle, the greatness of Tim Boyle. It's like there's a lot at stake here for a lot of people. And if he can't protect himself, I wouldn't touch that money because they need that out sooner rather than later. And I wouldn't make it any harder on yourself, especially if you plan on keeping your jobs, which I think you have to wake up every morning and say, I don't plan to get fired. Let's make my life easier long-term as well as short-term. Chubb. This is the other big thing that's probably going to fall here in the next week or 2. He's due a whole lot of money. Now, if they cut him now, it opens up almost no cap space, so it makes no sense to cut him now. Correct. But post-June 1st, it's like $19 million. That's a whole lot of change. And that will let you sign your draft class. That'll give you like working capital to work with the whole rest of the year. They need him on the field because they need edge rushers, especially with Jaylen Phillips and his injury. And who knows if he'll be ready by week 1. But this guy's had 3 ACL injuries. He's had a foot injury. There's a lot. Is there any way he's not a post-June 1st cut?
If he's willing to play ball, because the first thing that's going to happen is like
they're going to ask him to take a pay cut. Yeah.
Well, correct, Bradley. Let's come have a conversation with your agent. We're going to give you a little haircut, and then the question becomes, okay, the negotiation is going to be how far down does it go? Chubb has some juice because he's a high-end player when healthy. He doesn't have a ton of juice because of the recent injury history. It's different than, let's say, Albert Wilson in, I think, circa 2018.
Oh, yeah. He went down to nothing.
They gave him a buzz cut. But he had no leverage. It was basically that, or was getting cut. Chubb has a little bit more leverage. I don't know that he has a ton, again, because of the injury. So it's going to come down to, can they come up with a number that works for both of them? If they can't, then yeah, it'll be a post-June 1 cut, because there's no way what the cap number is 28 mil, not happening.
Yeah. A couple more questions here, then I'll let you go. I want to talk about Chris Grier, because everyone, I see people, fans and people in the media as well, just say Mike McDaniel and Chris Grier are on the hot seat. And I always say, well, Mike McDaniel probably is. But is Chris Grier really on the hot seat this year? I mean, this man survived everything from a nuclear holocaust. I mean, he survives every change, every leadership change, every coaching change. This guy's been here in some capacity for 20. Do you think Chris is on the hot seat truly this year, where if this year goes bad, they don't make the playoffs, they miss the playoffs, they only win 8-9 games or only win 7 games, that he will not be the GM and also be out of the organization? Because there's one thing in not being a GM, but they move him to like VP advisor or something, whatever title. Do you think he's truly on the hot seat?
That's a great question. As you're talking about a guy who's been with the organization since 2000.
In some capacity.
In some capacity.
2016 is a GM. On paper, some people say that was really Mike Tannenbaum the first couple of years. Either way, that was on his office door. General manager since 2016.
Correct. And in reality, most people would agree 2019 is when he had all control. They also do everything collaboratively. So even though maybe that's wrong and they should be a name attached to every pick and it should be Chris Grier's name because he's the one who's a GM, I think they also do things collaboratively, and they would go, certain picks maybe belong to the head coach. Certain picks would belong to Chris Grier. Having said all that, you make a very good point. I think, I never really thought that anything was going to happen after this past season to either McDaniel or Grier, because again, they made all these investments last summer to Tyreek, Jaylen Waddle, Jalen Ramsey, Mike McDaniel got extensions, and in a couple of cases with more than 1 year left on the contract, that didn't need to be done. So Steve Ross basically, is fully invested in this group, getting him to where he wants to go. Does he have 1 more year of patience in him if it goes south again this year? That's a good question. Can I say 50-50, or is that taken?
No, that's fine. No, that's absolutely fine. Yeah, because I don't know either. I just think with Mike McDaniel, I could see if this year goes bad. Because look, what he said at his end of year press conference about guys showing up, late for meetings, and I was trying to find him, it didn't seem to work. One, I'm shocked he even said that out loud. I mean, why? There's nothing to gain by saying it. That's one. And two, that makes him look really bad. So I think if this year goes bad, that's an easy one to say. He lost the locker room. We haven't made the playoffs in a couple years. Things are just time for a change. But with Grier, it's a little bit different for all the reasons we know. The guy's always survived. Self-preservation of, and I think, could he maybe not GM, let me go up and let me hire the next GM, which still gives you your hands on things a little bit. I could see that happening. So, I think Mike McDaniel's on a hot seat. Grier might be gone as GM, but I don't think he's going to be gone out of the building. That's how I kind of see it as an outsider.
Yeah.
Not crazy, right?
Well, not about that. Crazy, yes, not about that. The other part of it too is Stephen Ross might at some point, again, maybe not after last year, but maybe after this year, but again, it's another non-playoff season, and be like, dude, we had all those picks. We basically flushed the 2019 season to reset. We had all those picks in 2020, in 2021. I spent money up the wazoo in free agency and to acquire big name players. I gave everybody new contract extensions. And what do I have to show for it? At some point he may be fed up to here. And to me, again, the big reason the rebuild hasn't worked is Chris Grier has hit on some picks. He has missed on some picks like every other GM.
Yeah, exactly.
But here's the thing, though. In 2020 and 2021, they had a total of 9 picks in the first 2 rounds.
Yep.
Can we say they came even remotely close to maximizing those 9 picks? And
absolutely not.
You know how many Pro Bowls out of those 9 selections combined? 1, 2 was last year.
2 was last year.
Yikes.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, that's a disaster. And what I say too is, I want to get your thoughts on this. Last thing I'll ask you. Miami this offseason, they can have a great free agency period, sign some guys who are pretty good, fill some holes. We go to the draft. You never really know the draft, but you can feel good about the draft. They got 10 picks. They draft some guys who look pretty good and think they're going to fill some holes. And there can be optimism heading into week 1 of 2025. I've been saying, I don't care what they do this offseason. The two biggest issues they have to their core that they can't answer until week 1 next year is the quarterback has to protect himself, stay healthy, and play the majority of the games, not miss 5 or 6. Play all or close to all, and the head coach has to be better at his job because Mike McDaniel, he's a charming guy, people like him and stuff, but man, can't win a challenge. Guys obviously now showing up late, which he's told us we wouldn't know that. Some of the questionable decision making at times. It's like it's the first quarter of a game where you're playing great on defense. It's 4th down at midfield. Go for it. Why? Your defense is playing good. Don't risk losing the ball at midfield. Let the other team score. Now you're playing from behind the whole. Like there's a lot of things that are questionable. He just hasn't won against teams that are good. Period. Do you see those as the two biggest issues this team faces heading into next year? Because to me, it's those two by a mile. I know the roster's got to get fixed. But if those two things aren't fixed with the quarterback and coach, I don't care what the roster is.
No, I agree with what you're saying, but and again, I hate to be that guy. They were what was it, 11-4 2 years ago.
A lot of those guys from that team are gone though.
But the same core guys are kind of there. The 3 guys on offense: Jaylen Ramsey,
Jalen Phillips, kinda.
Zach Sealer.
Yeah.
Phillips, if you want to Chubb might be a stretch.
Yeah.
Like if you were to tell me right now they're going to start off 7-2, would it be impossible? No, it wouldn't be impossible. And we'll be back to the same point. Okay, now you play good teams in December. What are you?
Yeah.
That to me is the biggest question mark again, because there has been nothing. They have, like you mentioned, they have a ton of holes to fill. I think the nucleus is good enough to where they're not going to be a catastrophe. And even last year, which was a flawed roster, they were 8-9 with their starting quarterback missing 6 games.
Yeah.
Not like they were a disaster. We're not talking about the Cleveland Browns here or
Jets.
There you go. Or the Jets. But your point is not unfair that Mike McDaniel
has to be better at his job. He's got to be a better head coach, period. And not just the stuff like having players show up on time. Like I'm talking game day head coach, when to throw that flag for a challenge, when to maybe punt, when you're running the ball well, don't get away from like simple stuff, which seems at least simple to me. Like the stuff, like he gets sometimes too cute, too creative. It's like, what's working? Make them prove they can stop it before you get away from it. Stuff like that. Like the in-game stuff is where I think he has his most problems. And then a quarterback, like slide, run out of bounds, don't take unnecessary chances. If you throw a pick and the guy's running down the sideline, don't go head first he's got to protect himself. Otherwise, we're going to be talking. It's a never-ending cycle of the same thing over and over again, unless those two truly improve in their jobs.
Okay, I mean, these are 2 of 17 things.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I don't disagree with you. As you could go more micro and go, you have to fix the offensive line, so you can have some degree of success. How about this another key? How about some degree of success in 3rd and short and 4th and short situations? Being able to find the ball, which they haven't been able to. Bringing the big play back into the offense, which disappeared last year. So, I mean, it's a long checklist. I thought McDaniel took a major step back in terms of, you mentioned the game management situations. There were a couple of times where, why are you going for it on 4th down? And there were a couple of
first quarter in a scoreless game. Yeah, it's
there were other times where it went the other way. Like, I remember the first drive against Seattle, he had Jason Sanders go out there to try like a 56-yard field goal. Why this would be the time to be aggressive against the Colts. Had Jason Sanders attempt a 54-yard field goal instead of going for it on 4th and 1. A rare miss for Jason Sanders, which wound up being huge. So it was weird. I liked those type of game management decisions a lot more in the first 2 years than I did last year. And I certainly hope it's not a regression like we saw. If you have any recollection or the knowledge of the Chargers, like Brandon Staley's first year was like gung ho, I'm going for it on fourth down every single time.
Yep.
Then he got weird the other way. Then it became like atrocious in game management, and boom, he was gone.
Yeah.
I have more confidence in Mike McDaniel that that's not going to be an issue. Anthony Weaver being back on as a defensive coordinator is going to help. So yeah, but no, they do have a long checklist, and Mike. It's not everybody has to do better at their jobs, including Mike McDaniel. Tua, Tyreek has to be better. Jaylen Waddle has to be better. The running backs have to break a tackle once in a while, which they did do very well. The offensive line has to be better, particularly in the interior. The defense, on defense, the pass rush has to be better because for the most part of the season, it wasn't good enough. Got a little bit of a boost in the second half when Chop came on. And then the secondary would be nice to get some takeaways.
Yeah. We didn't have a lot of interceptions last year. Not a lot of interceptions at all. I think like 3 maybe or 2. Well, I know the linebackers had a couple, but from guys actually in the secondary, I think Kader Kohou had 1. And I can't even remember anyone else in the secondary that had 1, honestly. Somebody else might have, but I think most of them were by the linebackers at the end of the year.
Yeah, I know Dotson had a couple. Zach had 1.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the secondary,
slim pickings.
Cater had the 1 in Seattle, and he had the 1 to win the game against San Francisco. And
correct.
Only Kevin had a pick, and I did Jalen Ramsey, I think, had 1 pick. He on the near.
Yep. All right, Alan, thank you so much. I'm going to sign off here and watch my Rangers lose to the Maple Leafs because it's been a rough year for my Rangers. Don't think we're making the playoffs this year.
I got time. They got like 25 games left.
Yeah, but they're way behind in point. I mean, they're pretty behind. They only got like 62 points or something. It's not good. But we'll see. But I do appreciate you taking a few minutes from your trip to Indy. Enjoy it. Enjoy the nice weather. Have some nice food. Got to go to what's the place out there? St. Elmo's, it's called, right?
Yeah, except St. Elmo is like world renowned for the shrimp cocktail and that ridiculously hot sauce. And I'm one of those who can't handle stuff that's too spicy. So that's not for me.
That's not for you. All right. But everyone, check out the All Dolphins podcast, wherever you listen to your podcast. Also, check out his work as he is the publisher of Miami Dolphins on SI. And, of course, you can follow him on Twitter, X, at Poupart NFL, Poupart NFL. Alan, take care, and I'm sure I'll talk to you again down the road.
Sounds good. Enjoyed it, Mike.
Thank you.